Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who ruled and teach well, and peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and in this video, I'll be profiling this clip from RT America's YouTube channel titled EU Backs Probe into U.S.-Israel War Crimes in Occupied Palestine. And this is just going to be another video showing that those people over in the Holy Land right now aren't the true children of Israel. The true children of Israel are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Those people over in the land right now, calling themselves Israelis, are imposters. They're actually Edomites of the tribe of Amalek. This is Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 5. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea, which is just the Greek way of saying Edom. And you Edomites are you so-called white people, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds, to cast it out for a prey. And how did those Amalekite Edomites get the Holy Land into their possession? By appointing it with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, and then further with UN charters in the late 1940s. And what have you seen go on in the Holy Land ever since those Amalekite Edomites appointed it into their possession? Nothing but death, destruction, war, and misery, which is another cut to you Amalekite Edomites not being the people, because it says in the scriptures that when the children of Israel, the true children of Israel, were back in the Holy Land, that there would be peace on earth. This is Micah chapter 4. I'm going to read verse 1 to 3. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of Yahweh shall be established in the top of the mountains. And mountains are symbolic for governments in the scriptures. So the mountain of the house of Yahweh is the kingdom of heaven being established, beginning with the elect, the 144,000, and the rest of the righteous 1/3. And it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, and to the house of the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. And are you seeing the people of the earth follow after the ways of those Amalekite Edomites over in the land right now? Do you see mass numbers of people reading the Talmud, speaking Yiddish, wearing all black with tzitzis, Shirley Temple curls, and yarmulkes? No. You're actually seeing a lot of pushback from people all across the planet against those Amalekite Edomites for what they're doing to those Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, which you Palestinians don't belong there either. You're Ishmaelites or so-called Arabs. And you're also seeing a lot of people push back against those Amalekite Edomites since they're constantly pushing for war with Iran. And as we'll see from that clip on RT America's YouTube channel, you've got the ICC, or International Criminal Court, opening up probes into Israeli war crimes against those Palestinians. If those Amalekite Edomites were the true children of Israel, you wouldn't see any of this happen. The nations across the planet would be following after their ways and doing exactly what they say. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And are you seeing the law go forth of Zion and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem? No, you're seeing all manner of wickedness come out of the land of Israel from those Amalekite Edomites. Hey, Tel Aviv's known as Pink City, and it's one of the pride capitals of the world. And then they've also got kosher pork over there. And then they've got their own constitution, which is separate from the scriptures. Just complete madness. Verse 3. And he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Like I said earlier, when the true children of Israel were back in the land, there would be peace and no more war on the face of the earth, which is clearly not what you're seeing over in the land right now with those Amalekite Edomites. Hell, When the Israeli Declaration of Independence was signed, shortly thereafter, there was the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, and then later on you had the 6 Days War. And what are you seeing going on right now? Constant conflict. Israel pushing for war with Iran, Israel launching continual airstrikes in Syria, Israel at war with Hezbollah and Hamas, and Israel's continuous war crimes against those Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Let's get back to that video.
The International Criminal Court, or ICC, has begun its investigation into war crimes committed by Israel and its IDF in the West Bank and Gaza Strip from December 2019. Though Israel does not recognize the authority of the ICC, both Jerusalem and Washington issued a rebuke on this move. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lashed out at the court in a recorded video.
The state of Israel is under attack this evening. The biased ICC in The Hague made a decision which is the essence of anti-Semitism and hypocrisy.
And what's funny about that word Semitism is that it came about very recently. The real term is Shemitism, or being a Shemite. And those Palestinians are so-called Arabs. Those Ishmaelites are Shemitic. And those Elamites over in Iran are Shemitic. And with you Amalekite Edomites, who are also Shemitic, constantly pushing for a conflict against them, that would make you anti-Shemites.
It determined that our brave and moral soldiers, who are fighting against the cruelest terrorists on earth, they are all war criminals. It decided that when we are building a home in our eternal capital, Jerusalem, it's a war crime. The ICC, which was established to prevent a reoccurring of the horrors of the Nazis, instigated against the Jewish people, now turned against the state of the Jewish people.
His remarks came after U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris joined Netanyahu on a call to reaffirm the U.S.'s, quote, opposition to the ICC's attempts to exercise its jurisdiction over Israeli personnel, and underscored the country's unwavering commitment to Israel's security. So here to weigh in, former UK MP George Galloway. So George, you just heard it there, Bibi's harsh words to the ICC. The ICC is meant to serve as a last resort when a country's own judicial system is unable or unwilling to investigate war crimes. So which is it for Israel? Are they unable or unwilling to investigate themselves?
Well, once again, we have the isolation twins of Israel and the United States standing against the whole world. It's not just the European Union, of course. It's the whole world. It's Africa. It's Asia. It is the Latin American countries. It is just the world against Israel and the United States. And that's not really a good place to be. Everyone can't be out of step except you and the state of Israel. So it's a very foolish approach to take to this, whether you recognize the court or you don't. I mean, if you don't recognize it, why are you even talking about it? Why are you even attacking it? When the people in the court decide that there's a prima facie case that the Israeli state has broken not its own laws, that's why its own courts are not the legitimate jurisdiction for this, but broken international law, particularly law which relates to territory occupied by military force, which of course Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem are.
Well, George.
But if they were the true children of Israel, none of this would be happening. They wouldn't have to worry about ICC laws or any other nations coming against them, because the law would go forth of Zion and everybody else would be following after them and not bucking up to anything they're saying. As it says back in Micah chapter 4, verse 2, and many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh and to the house of the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths, not opening up ICC probes into Israeli war crimes. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem.
To Israel's credit, some of it here. In the past, they have opened many probes into troop conduct and have found some of their own guilty of various crimes. Could the ICC's move then exacerbate the upcoming talks between the U.S. and Iran on rejoining the JCPOA, given America's commitment to backing Israel?
Well, it will certainly throw up in sharp relief the double standards involved here. And Israel's judicial system deals admirably, not least with high-ranking politicians, including Mr. Netanyahu, who may very well soon be going to prison. But what we're
Wait a second. If they were the true children of Israel, then why do they have a judicial system separate from the laws, statutes, and commandments from Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai? Because again, they're not. They're those Idumeans in Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 5, that have appointed the land into their possession. When the spirit of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai is dealing with you, and you know how to correctly navigate through the scriptures, this whole narrative of those Amalekite Edomites being the people clearly doesn't add up. And again, back in Micah chapter 4, verse 2, what does it say? For the law shall go forth of Zion, the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem, not ICC laws, judicial laws, or any other laws of the heathens. When the true children of Israel, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are back in the land, not only will there be peace on earth, but the only law that shall reign supreme are the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai.
About here are crimes against international law, which the Israeli state cannot, by definition, examine impartially, because the state is accused of breaking the laws of the Geneva Protocols and many others that govern the conduct of an occupying force. And there's no getting away from this. Either the West Bank and the Gaza are occupied territories, or after 57 years, they have now de facto become a part of Israel, in which case the people in it will have to be given the vote.
Well, George, there it is. Under the Geneva Convention, following the 1967 war, Israel annexed East Jerusalem, and as we know in recent years, has expanded settlements in that area, which, as you noted, is a violation of the convention principle that an occupying power is barred from transferring its population to those captured territories. So how can Israel defend against that war crime? You heard Bibi say that this is their land.
Well, it isn't, I'm afraid. They may wish to acquire it, hold it, and keep it against all international law.
Appointed into their hands, like those Idumeans in Ezekiel 36, verse 5.
But it will never be their land. The law is very clear on that. Israel violently, militarily occupied this territory in 1967. The fact that it's held on to it all of this time with greater or lesser extent of use of force is completely immaterial. If I seized Miami Beach, and I'd like to, if I held on to it for 57 years, it wouldn't become mine. People have to look at it through the eyes of the law which governs militarily occupied territories, and they're simply turning their face away from it. And I can understand why they do that. What I don't understand is why an American government would give them a blank check so to do, because that's dragging your country's reputation down, as well as Mr. Netanyahu.
And last...
Because there are also Idumeans that have pushed for appointing the land of Israel into their hands. Who's been the main benefactor of those Amalekite Edomites over in the Holy Land? The Edomites over in America.
George, Hamas welcomes this move, obviously. They say that their rocket attacks into Israel in 2014 were legitimate. The ICC says that they will examine Hamas's role in this as well. So what about that?
Well, international law should be completely impartial in dealing with alleged crimes against humanity, war crimes, breaches of international law, the Geneva Protocols, and so on. So I have no problem at all with that. But you cannot equate these two forces. One is a ragged Islamist band of people that are fighting against the original crime. And the original crime was the seizure and ongoing occupation of the territory. That will never change.
Ongoing occupation and conflict. But once more, back in Micah chapter 4, verse 3, what does it say? And he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. When the true children of Israel are back in the land, there will be peace and no more war, especially in the land of Israel. I'm going to close it out in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 18. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. Point blank period. Just another cut to you Amalekite Edomites being imposters and not the true people. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim are edified. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.